So this is my DIY coffee table. I bought these pieces of wood at Lowe's. And so there's 4 legs. I bought 2 pieces for the legs and cut them in half. Then I bought 2 tier pieces, these round pieces, with the beveled side edge. And what I'm doing now is adding pencil marks so that I can do sanding for it. Because it is sanded, they do sand it, but in order to get the stain, wood stain, to go on properly, you have to sand it from a very low grit to a high grit. So I think I was using 80, 120, and 220 grit. It's better if you can do even more, like 4 grit differences, so starting with like 80 or 60 and then going up to 220 or 360. But that's what I had. And I'm doing it by hand because I didn't think I really needed to buy a electrical orbital sander. But I started with the beveled edge because if I made any mistakes and maybe scratched the top surface, then I could just go back and the second part would be sanding the top, so it would correct any issues there. Of course, I'm wearing an N95 mask to protect me from the dust particles, which can be bad for the lungs. Do it outside. I'm in a garage, so I have the garage door open to help with ventilation. And those little cut marks, so that's the bottom tier, and that's where the legs will go through. And you can see there's holes where I have a screw that goes through the leg into the bottom tier. So that's how I basically put it together. But then these are the legs, and I already applied a pre-stain, which soaks into the wood and makes the stain go on better. But staining is required to make the stain go on properly. So pre-stain, stain, as I'm rubbing on right now, using microfiber cloths, because I determined those were the best because they didn't leave any lint. They didn't leave any like cloth particle left over. So you wipe on the stain and wipe it off within like 60 seconds. That's different for oil-based stain, but I'm using water-based stain because of the safety concerns. It's lower VOC and it doesn't heat up chemically. So you can see I'm wearing a respirator, a chemical respirator, to help protect myself from the VOCs, which can irritate the sinuses. And I actually did get some irritation to my sinuses, even despite having fans and ventilation and a mask. So really do this outside if you can. But then you wipe it off. Wiping it off is the really important part because otherwise it looks too dark. So you have to apply it and wipe it off quickly. Now this is the last part, which is the protective coat. I'm using polyacrylic, which is similar to polyurethane. And I'm actually sanding the first coat that I already dried. So it's dried, I'm sanding it so that the second coat will stick, and then using tack cloth to remove the dust. Also, some of the little grooves in the wood naturally cause the dust to stick. So what you'll see in a second, is I use a computer compressed air duster to get those pieces of dust, the dust out of the little crevices. Of course, I'm wearing an N95 mask because of the dust. So you want to have proper filtration. Maybe have a filter. I would run a filter near the area with a HEPA filter so it sucks in any dust that's in close proximity. Again, the sanding process for the polyacrylic is just very light, just enough. If you do too much, it can actually make it look whitish rather than clear. So just enough to scratch the surface, and then you just take it away with tacky cloth, like I'm doing it there. Right there, I'm using tacky cloth now. And there's the compressed air duster. And a lot of this process, the whole woodworking project, is knowing how to use your materials and how to keep things clean. So like I figured out how much polyacrylic I needed to use, which was like a couple of tablespoons. So I didn't end up pouring the whole thing into the paint tray. I also used tin foil to line the paint tray so that I didn't have to keep throwing it out or ended up with dried pieces of polyurethane coming into my paintbrush, because I didn't want that to contaminate the coating. Again, with the brush, you want to use a really high quality brush, like a paintbrush, because the really low quality ones, the little hairs can come out and then get stuck in the polyurethane or the polyacrylic. Of course, the lighting's really important. I have a light shining right on that beveled edge, so I can see the solution go on, the polyacrylic go on. And then I've got this turntable so that I don't have to think too much about moving the object. I just use my fingers to kind of slide it along. I'm also monitoring the humidity levels with that little hydrometer, that little white thing on the table there, and it tells me the temperature too. Because sometimes you want to check on these things because that can affect the drying process. And yeah, I'm just applying the last edge, beveled section. Now this is the foam roller. I'm applying it very quickly, and it becomes very bubbly when I'm doing that. So what I decided to do was to use a standard foam brush. I think it was 3 inches wide. You'll see in a second here. To smooth out those bubbles. Basically break the bubbles, make it really smooth, always going in the direction of the grain of the wood. And then I'll go around the edges to catch any overflow, like anything that spilled over the edges. I cut that part, but that's what I would do to complete the whole coating. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.